Welcome to another episode of Me, My Wife, and Sports. I'm your host, Fitz, with my lovely wife, Darcy.
Hey, y'all. My Texas accent coming through.
Yeah. All right. Before we get started, we have a question that we received that we want to answer, and I'll let Darcy sort of dive into
So that was in reference really to last episode, right? That
Yes.
came in response to last episode. So the question was, and it comes from Dukes, Cambo Dukes 06. I think that's right. But how do you feel about NCAA athletes receiving $600 and a free copy of the new video game NCAA Football 25 coming out in June?
That's EA Sports.
Okay. If they decline, their character name and likeness will not be used in the game. This is including star players also receiving the $600 and a free copy of the game. Should star players and faces of NCAA football receive more than others? That was one question. As they could bring fans to the game because they look forward to buying it just to play with their favorite players. So, and then there was a follow-up email that came in with that.
Well, let's answer the first part of that before we get...
Okay, to the follow-up.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first part would be, how do you feel about that? And I think that the athletes, again, are being taken by the institution, the NCAA and EA Sports, because to give them $600 and a free copy of the game, really? I mean,
Right.
That's almost insulting.
Whereas the NCAA is going to get way more than that just for giving the permission to use the likenesses
Exactly.
and the NCAA banner and so forth.
And they know, the NCAA knows if they accept that $600 and a free copy, then they can't ask for anything more.
Right.
So it's the idea of negotiating. If I offer you this and you accept it, then you can't come back and say, wait a minute, time out. Oh, I didn't know that you were going to do this, that, and the other with it.
Right.
So they think they're outsmarting these kids.
Right.
But hopefully these kids have advisors, their counsel, their parents, anybody who is smart on contracts and negotiating and business to tell them, don't do it.
Well, definitely, because EA Sports go make billions off of this. And with the athletes, it's just a one-time deal.
Again, like I said, it's insulting.
It is.
It's very, very insulting. And regardless to whether you're a star player or any player, if your likeness is being used in that game, then you should be able to negotiate a deal based off of what EA Sports and whoever else is producing that game, based off of what they're going to make in the long run. So even if you're the dude on the bench, if they're using your face and you're sitting on the bench, you should be able to say, wait a minute.
Right.
I want $10,000 because you got me on the bench.
Right. Because I guarantee the NCAA is not getting $600 and a copy of the game.
Right. And so that would be, that's how I feel about it, to respond to,
I totally agree.
To the listener. But then he came back with, also, Arch Manning has already declined the offer and will not be featured in the new football game that is making a comeback since the game has not been released since 2013. Now, I didn't, okay, first of all, I ain't an EA Sports person.
Right,
I'm not, I'm not into gaming like that.
Right.
But I know you do it.
Right.
And I didn't realize you never buy the games every year anyway.
No.
But I just didn't realize that it hadn't been out since 2013.
Right. And that was mostly with the grandkids anyway. And now that they're a little bit older, they want to come visit as often as they should. So
hint, hint.
So I don't order the games
to feel the need.
Yeah.
Okay, blame it on the grandkids, but I know you and your friends was gaming too, so I'm gonna put y'all on Front Street with that anyway. Anywho, I think that since the game has not been released since 2013,
Right.
people are going to buy the game. They're not looking, they don't care who's in the game.
Right.
Really. So it's not going to matter. I applaud Arch Manning, and okay, Arch Manning comes from the Manning family.
Right.
So I'm sure they sat around, hit Cooper, who on the commercial, JB Smooth used to always say, Coop's my favorite. Coop's my favorite. I love that commercial. But I'm sure they all got around and they put pen to paper and got the calculators out and said, no, that's a bad deal.
Right.
And so everybody else watching or listening, y'all need to take a page from the Manning family.
Yeah.
Because that was a Manning family decision, no doubt.
Definitely. Definitely.
And to think what would happen if all the players said, nope, we're not doing it. Now EA Sports.
It'll be a bunch of faceless and no signature moves.
Now you guys are really going to bond together,
right.
Show what kind of power you have, show what kind of intelligence you have on the business end. See, kids, athletes. Okay, y'all kids to me, that's not an insult. But know that this is a business.
Right.
At the end of the day, you got to, in those business classes, y'all got to be paying attention.
Right.
Because this is what you're joining.
Right.
A business. You are going to work for a business.
Exactly.
Just so happens that your business is playing basketball.
Right.
But you still got to know how it operates. And if they could bond together and say, no, none of us are going to do it.
Get a union.
Or just on this one
right.
particular issue. No, none of us want your $600 and a copy of the game.
Right.
And now you send EA Sports and the NCAA and everybody else back into the boardroom, and they got to come up with a new deal.
Yeah. It's definitely a clear message on the young men or young adults are well educated and a little bit smarter than folks back in the day.
Exactly. Don't let that carrot that they're dangling, don't fall for that trick.
Right.
It's too much knowledge out there for people to fall for that trick. So I hope that answers that listener's questions. That's strictly what you hear here, just the opinions of Darcy and Fitzgerald Bobo. But, that's my opinion. So
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Moving on, let's sort of jump into, as we know it, we're into March Madness month right now. So we've been watching a lot of college basketball lately, and a few games have been nail biters and underdogs who almost pulled it out. And then I think in a couple cases that they did.
So what we've been watching has been what the
just
last regular season games.
Right.
Well,
right.
Goodness gracious, if these have been the regular season games, I can't wait to see what March Madness is going to look like.
Yeah. Well, everybody's jockeying for that position, because only a certain few are pretty much guaranteed a spot in the tournament. So when they have the selection on Selection
Sunday is March 17th. Yes.
Everybody will be holding their breath. With that said, do you know when the first NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament was played?
No.
Take a guess.
I have no idea.
1939.
1939?
It had 8 teams.
Wow.
Yeah. And Oregon is the first NCAA tournament champion.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they beat Ohio State.
Beat Ohio State. Okay.
Yeah. Now, this, as I was reading, one thing I did come across, which I didn't know and didn't even really think about it, the term March Madness. Basically, this term was first used in reference to a basketball game at an Illinois high school, and an official, Henry V. Porter, in 1939 sort of coined that phrase. But it didn't really catch and jump into the college ranks or anything, not until 1982 tournament with Brent Musburger. He would use that term, and it caught on like wildfire after that.
And they have not trademarked the phrase March Madness.
Oh, they haven't?
I mean, I don't know that they have banned other people from using that term So like with the NFL, like they said, we own the Super Bowl,
Right.
and you can't use the term Super Bowl in your advertising and all these other things. And I don't think they've done that with March Madness.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
I have to look it up
Something
and see.
we'll look up, yeah.
Now, do you know which team has the most NCAA tournament appearances?
We talked about this. I don't remember.
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
And then followed by North Carolina.
Oh, of course. It was just North Carolina? The school North Carolina? Under Roy Williams and...
Well, he wasn't coaching then, but that's the school North Carolina.
Okay, all right. But we say North Carolina, they got Duke, they got all these...
They're called North
Duke,
Carolina.
I know, okay.
They're not called Duke, like you have North Carolina State. So now that we're heading into postseason, what are your thoughts on the upcoming tournaments for the various conferences?
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting because when I look at my busted bracket from last year, I'm paying so much more attention this year. So every year the goal is to go a little bit further in our bracketology, which if you tune into our Facebook page, you too can join our group and do a bracket for fun and bragging rights. And we'll even announce whoever wins on the show. But last year, Purdue was taken out by the 16 seed.
Right. Which I don't see that happening this year.
And who was it? Virginia? Virginia was seeded number 4. They were taken out by Furman, who was 13.
Right.
I think there was another big upset.
Because I think UConn ended up winning that year.
I'm talking last year.
Yeah.
Did UConn win last year? I don't know who won.
I think it was UConn.
My bracket was totally
UConn
busted.
won last year.
I don't remember. But nobody, it's hard to say. It's hard to really, until everybody is seated on the brackets, it's hard to talk about. I'm sure that UConn, even though it amazes me that they are not talking about the fact that they lost in round 64 last year.
Right.
Was it that same 6 foot, the big guy on Purdue? I'm talking about Purdue. I said UConn. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Purdue.
And he's 7.
And he's 7
4, I believe.
Okay. So last year, he was there last year, right?
Right.
And they lost.
But with any team, I think you need more than one player to make it work. And anybody can lose on any given day.
But I'm just thinking like this year, they're going to, even though it's not being talked about in the media,
right?
They know. Right. They know what happened in the first round.
Right.
And so they are going to be, Purdue, I'm talking about now, is going to be very determined not to be upset again.
I agree.
So,
and they've won the Big Ten because I think there's only 2 games, maybe 1 game left for the regular season, and the closest team is 3 games out. So,
I mean, who are the sleepers? Who are the sleepers in March Madness? I don't know. Is Memphis a sleeper? Could they be a sleeper?
I think Norfolk State, I consider them, or even Central Connecticut, a sleeper.
Central Connecticut.
Exactly. See?
Yeah. So it's gonna be real interesting. I don't have an outright. I'm looking at Houston. I'm trying to follow Houston. I had Houston last year to go to be my champion, and they let me down.
Well, they had a tough game the other night. I didn't think they were going to pull it out, but they did. So, but in the tournament, I don't think you can afford to be down 15, 20 points,
game.
And then
the other thing too is, now let me be sure to bring this up. There is no clear undefeated team. Like everybody has some losses.
Correct.
Unlike, shout out to South Carolina women's team, who is completely undefeated. And congratulations to South Carolina women's team. And I love Dawn Stanley and what she's doing with that team. And she lost all 5 of her starting 5 players last year to the WNBA. And she started all over and took them undefeated throughout this whole year. So hats off to Dawn and the South Carolina Gamehogs. In the men's, we don't have anybody like that. So to me, it's anybody's game. A lot really is riding on how people are going to get placed in the seating
Right.
when doing Selection Sunday.
Well,
And it might have always been that way. It's just for me,
right.
this year, I'm able to devote a lot more attention to it because I have a lot more time on my hands. So I'm understanding this a lot more.
Well, since you brought up the women's team, also their selection date is March the 17th.
As well.
So,
Selection Sunday for them as well, yes.
I think theirs is at 8 o'clock or 8 p.m. So we'll be following both sides as we move forward. And who knows, maybe the women's side will be a little bit more exciting. It's definitely going to be interesting with the undefeated team sort of leading the way as supposedly to be the top seed and projected winner.
Right. They're the team to beat.
Right.
But then you got Caitlin Clark, who made her points history.
Right.
In Iowa. Is she with Iowa or is it Iowa State? Iowa. So again, yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting on their side too. But on the men's side, I think it's anybody's game. I mean, this is going to be one year where I think people really need to pay attention to the first 4 games that are played, where they decide the last 2 teams that get those last 2 seedings, because based on last year, I don't even know where Fair Dickinson School is. Like, where did they come from?
You know, I want to say it's here in the East Coast, but I can't remember as well. But with that said, for the number 1 seeds, for the tournament placing, for the regions, it's pretty much, I would say the top 3 are a given.
So who are your top 3?
Of course, Purdue, UConn, and Houston, and Arizona. Those are your top 4.
Those
are my top 4.
See, okay, so we have the same top 3, Purdue, Houston, and UConn. That 4th seed, that 4th number 1 position is still up for grabs. And everybody has a different take on it. You and I have a different take on it. Media has a different take on it. And I think everybody is going to be waiting to see what the selection committee does with that 4th number 1 seeding.
Well, you know,
because they've been talking about how Kansas City is playing and, oh my God, what's happening. And Bill Self has never been
Kansas City,
not Kansas. I said Kansas City. How Kansas and Bill Self have never been seeded anything less than a number 4. And so they're wondering what's going on with that. They talked about Arizona, but Tennessee is in the talk for the 4th seed as well as Auburn and Arizona. So there are a lot of things out there. Oh, it's going to be so interesting. You know, they've been talking about the criteria, and they're trying to drill it down to things like sportsmanship. You know, we were talking about that and how teams play. Do they run up the score? How do they handle, just themselves on the court?
Right. And they've also been talking about the number of teams from each individual conference. Like they're saying that the Big 12, and when I say they, I'm talking about sports writers and all the experts out there, saying that the Big 12 more than likely is going to have the most teams in the tournament. I think they were looking at either 6 to 9 teams, which is...
And so how many teams are in the Big 12?
Oh, in the Big 12.
Is it 12 in the Big 12? Or do they just call it the Big 12?
It's more than 12.
That makes
it's
so
about
sense.
14 or 15.
So why do they call it the Big 12?
Well, just like they call the Big 10 the Big 10, because that's how it started off.
Okay, it was 10.
And then all these schools been moving around. Because, for example, you have West Virginia, who used to be in the Atlantic 10 years ago. Now they're in the Big 12. So they travel always from West Virginia to go out west, for the most part, to play.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What's the benefit to changing conferences?
It's all about money.
Okay.
It's all about money. Because if you have a strong conference with a lot of teams that get television time and so forth and make the tournament a great deal because as you move up in the tournament, teams are getting additional monies.
Mm.
And I know with some conferences, they share that money with the other teams in the conference or the conference itself, I should say. So if I have 4 or 5 teams that make the tournament, that's revenue coming back to our conference.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
it makes a difference. Now, the question is, too, I know you said you agree with me on the 3 number 1 seeds for the regions, but that 4th seed, the question is it going to be a team that's ranked real high or real low?
Mm.
That's the thing.
I don't know.
Because you have to look at the conferences, too.
If they do it, if Kansas gets it, it'll be a team ranked low because, I mean,
what are they?
Or when you say low, what do you mean?
Like the number 25,
Okay.
25th ranked team in the NCAA.
Yeah, I don't know. I just
What is Kansas ranked?
I'm not sure. I just think that after the whole fiasco last year with Florida State not making the football playoffs, like the NCAA has got to get this one right.
Well, we hope.
We hope they get it right. We really do, because they are still people, analysts, sports people are still talking about the fact that Florida State, the Seminoles, didn't get, and they were like the best team. They were ranked number 1, I think, in their conference. They had a better record than whoever got in, and it was just really, and it's so heartbreaking for the players.
Right.
That's the thing. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm so excited I always get excited about March Madness. I did not go straight to college. I, went into the military, so I didn't have the college experience like a lot of people did. I did the military. I was in the military and went to school that way. So for me, this is like an opportunity to just be a old kid.
No.
Like what you see in the stands a lot. You see more alumni in the stands than you do sometimes.
Well, the fact, too, that is
other kids,
televised. A lot more games are televised, like teams like Farley Dickerson.
Yeah.
They probably would have never been on TV 15 to 20 years ago.
Right.
You know? So it's very enlightening to see smaller schools you probably wouldn't even heard of unless you saw them in a tournament or saw one of their regular games on ESPN or ESPN Plus, or whatever the case may be, or especially if you're not local.
Right. Yeah. I think the ACC conference or the ACC championship is going to be here in the DMV, the Maryland, Virginia district. Yeah, I think they said it's going to be in Washington, D.C. The ACC championship.
Oh, you're talking about for the conference play? For
conference play, for their conference. Their conference play is going to be here.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going to be.
I would imagine if it is, it has to be at the they don't call it the Verizon Center. What is it called?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's had a lot of different names.
Right.
But yeah, we know it as the Verizon Center.
Right.
Is it the Capital One? Is it Capital One?
Capital One Arena.
Capital One Arena?
I think so.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Yeah. But
well, also, because I think a few games are starting tonight is the beginning of also the playoffs, conference playoffs.
Really? Yeah. Conference playoffs.
Conference playoffs.
The conference playoffs are fun, interesting. That has to me, I think a lot of decisions are made there as well.
Right.
As far as seating for Selection Sunday, I would just like to be a fly on the wall. When you look at the selection committee criteria, it's so confusing. And you got to know that that's just probably regulation verbiage. And when they get in the room, they do not have the regulations out and they are not going by that kind of stuff. There's so many other subjective criteria that are being used based on each person's own preferences and
And what it boils down to, I think, as well, all those folks sitting on that committee, the selection committee, they're looking at, okay, who's going to make the biggest money for us?
Right.
And the matchup. Some of the teams they have to put in by virtue of their standing in the rankings.
Right.
So then their next step is, okay, if we got to put in a Kentucky, who do we want to match them up against? So those things is how it plays. And for the longest time, the little schools have argued of being shortchanged. And I think that was part of adding the additional teams into the March Madness. Now that you get a few of those smaller teams that were on the bubble make it, and yeah, they might win, might not, but it adds to excitement. And the folks can root for the underdog. So it's all kind of angles going on.
You know what's going to be interesting this year to see is where does Duke fall? Because remember, we used to always talk about how Duke always played in North Carolina.
Right.
They never had to travel. They were always playing in their own backyard.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see this year if Duke has to get on the road like everybody else has.
Well, I think last year they did. They pushed them out west or Midwest. What do you have? I know you got your last year's bracket in front of you.
Let's go to the paper.
They played in
the East last year.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I thought it was one year that they didn't.
Was Coach K still there last year?
Yes.
So there you have it.
But I'm
just saying, like,
well, I'm going to have to look that up.
1 + 1 always equals 2. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see this year if Duke plays in the East or if they get sent to any other area because they have never played out. And if anyone out there knows if Duke has played outside of the East in the first round, send us an email and let us know because I'd like to know.
Right. Well, they're going to have a tough one coming up this Saturday. I believe they play North Carolina.
Yes.
So they're jockeying for that, I think, 7th and 8th spot or 8th and 9th spot in the standings. So it'll be kind of interesting. But Duke always seems to come through. They just seem to pull it out. But, I think this year, though, I think they might throw them in the South.
We're going to see.
And that'll be out of Dallas, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know what the cities are.
Yeah, the South is Dallas. I want to say the West is Los Angeles, and the Midwest is Detroit, and the East is Boston for the beginning.
Huh, okay.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned, well, let me backtrack. The South, I think it's the championship is Dallas, but like the number 1 seed, they'll play in Memphis. Then you have Spokane, Washington, and Pittsburgh area. And I think Duke is playing in Pittsburgh area. So you can kind of say that's the East.
That's, well.
Or I think they will play in the Pittsburgh area. Let me put it that way. Then you have teams that are playing in the Charlotte area. But they consider
just know
that the South.
Y'all,
Dallas.
We'll be tracking it. We'll be watching it.
Yeah.
I'll be watching it.
Oh, we all will. And I think they'll just have the top game in Dallas, I believe. And the same for the West. I think the top game be in Los Angeles because out West you have, of course, they're going to be playing Salt Lake and Memphis and Omaha area. So, all right. Hey, that's been a great conversation.
Yes.
And we can talk about this all day, which we will continue on the next couple of episodes as the tournament kicks in and heats up.
Yes.
So with that said, I would like to thank everyone for tuning in and partying. Darcy, you have any last words?
Last words are check out our Facebook page. And we have a new Facebook page, so please like it, our Facebook page.
And what is that? The title of the Facebook page?
Me, My Wife, and Sports. Just search for it. It'll come up. And join our bracket group so that the more the merrier. And your partner is a reflection of you.
All right. I appreciate it.
Bye, y'all.